Haru had never felt like he belonged in his own skin. He was overweight, shy to a fault, and overshadowed by the confidence of nearly everyone around him. His classmates snickered behind his back, or sometimes to his face, about his weight and his demeanor. From his first day of high school, he had been branded an outcast, relegated to the far edges of every classroom. Even his sister, a grade above him, made a point of telling him not to speak to her in the hallways. She avoided him with a disgusted glare that he once thought was reserved for strangers. Over time, he learned the painful truth. She was embarrassed by him and did not want to risk harming her own social standing. Yet, the real blow that twisted a permanent knot of resentment in his chest came from two specific classmates, Yumi and Hana. Yumi had been the first one he mistook for a friend, someone who smiled and borrowed his notes, who gave the illusion of kindness. When Haru, in his naive hope, suggested they hang out after school, she twisted that invitation into a public spectacle, loudly mocking him in front of everyone, as if he had professed undying love. She made sure to let the entire class know she found him disgusting. That day, his humiliation turned into an urban legend among their peers, bringing him the nickname Trash Panda and other cruel epithets. Hana, a popular girl who had once seemed indifferent at worst, later made it clear she did not want him in her social sphere. She cut off contact as soon as she realized that even being seen talking to him might harm her standing. All of this merged into a single daily nightmare for Haru. He drifted from one humiliating moment to the next, his self-worth eroding with every snicker, every insult, and every look of disdain. Sometimes, he would imagine that life might improve after graduation, or that he might magically lose weight, or that he could find acceptance elsewhere. But these were fantasies he could not truly believe in. He felt trapped in the present, powerless. It was on an especially grim day that something happened that would change his reality forever. He fell down a flight of stairs outside the school library. To others, it was just an unfortunate accident, if they even bothered to notice at all. In Haru's mind, however, that slip was a literal tumble into the unknown. He missed his footing, yelped, and crashed violently. Pain exploded in his side, and he felt bones crack. A moment of terror seized him, certain he was about to die. Then everything went black. Within that darkness, he heard a strange ticking sound, as though the gears of a clock were spinning in a void. The next thing he knew, he was awake in his own bedroom on a Monday morning, heart hammering, body completely uninjured. At first, he dismissed it as a surreal dream, but as the day progressed, he noticed a bizarre sense of déjà vu. Every event, from the teacher's announcements to the schedule on the blackboard, unfolded exactly as it had on a Monday, several weeks prior. When he saw Yumi pass by with the same conversation on her lips as before, he realized in a burst of shock that he had somehow gone back in time. In the days that followed, he tested this hypothesis in small ways, changing minor details to confirm he was rewriting the same events. Alarm, confusion, and a flicker of curiosity swirled inside him. If he really had gone back in time, maybe he could avoid or lessen the humiliations he had suffered. That first jump backward was only the beginning. Every time Haru experienced extreme stress or intense physical pain thereafter, the world would lurch, and he would wake up again at the start of that same Monday morning. Bullies' beatings sometimes triggered it. Other times, his own despair, like a night when his classmates posted an embarrassing video of him online, pushed him over the edge, and the loop reset again. He dubbed these terrifying restarts resets, and began keeping a mental tally. After a few dozen resets, he realized with silent awe that this cyclical existence was not ending on its own. Every loop began the same Monday morning, at the start of a semester. He discovered that although his body always reverted to its original state, overweight, out of shape, and awkward, his mind retained memories, knowledge, and even something like mental muscle memory. His reflexes, learned from repeated fights or escapades, improved incrementally each time. He soon realized he could memorize quiz questions, entire sets of test answers, and the bullies' tactics in the hallways. By the 20th loop, he recognized that he possessed an advantage no one else had: infinite retries. Each catastrophic event that killed him or shattered his spirit triggered the loop, allowing him to start over, but keep what he had learned. Still, it was not a magical instant fix to all his problems. Even if he knew how to answer every test question perfectly, he had to wrestle with the fact that he remained physically weak, and his classmates still saw him as an easy target. He attempted to change his fate step by step. In some loops, he tried to appease Yumi or avoid her entirely. In others, he confronted Hana directly, demanding answers. These efforts rarely ended well. His sister continued to treat him as a stain on her image, and bullies found new and inventive ways to demean him. But over time, he refined his approach. He studied workout routines, watched martial arts tutorials, and memorized entire self-defense programs on the internet. He attempted to put them into practice during each loop, starting from the Monday morning when the timeline resumed. He would wake at dawn, trying to jog around his neighborhood, do push-ups, and strengthen his core. Initially, he could barely manage a short run without wheezing. He had no real fighting experience, so even the bullies who were not exactly martial arts experts could overpower him. Yet each loop taught him a new lesson. He learned the best ways to position his feet, how to dodge certain attacks, and which strategies worked for deflecting aggression in the corridors. After a few dozen loops, he also realized he could manipulate the academic realm to an extraordinary degree. He studied entire textbooks while recalling precisely which questions teachers would ask on tests. By the time he had reset 100 times, he found himself able to recite complicated formulas or entire passages of text from memory. Teachers marveled at his sudden leaps of knowledge in the loops where he actually decided to showcase it. Yet he remained physically unimpressive, and his social standing among classmates changed only marginally. The bullies were stunned if he dodged them once or twice, but they still regrouped and cornered him in larger numbers. Within these first 100 loops, Haru also grew painfully familiar with Yumi's and Hana's patterns of cruelty. Yumi often seemed to sense if he was about to confront her or reveal some hidden feeling, and she weaponized it to humiliate him publicly. Hana, while less openly hostile, was fiercely protective of her image and made sure no one saw them conversing in a friendly manner. Haru often overheard her telling friends that she could not afford to be seen with a loser like him. In loop after loop, these same events repeated themselves, leaving him feeling powerless. Even so, each run offered him a chance to refine his reactions, if not always to triumph, then at least to mitigate the damage. His sister, meanwhile, acted as if she had no sibling at all. On the rare occasions he tried to engage her, she would brush him off. She did not hesitate to mention that she did not want the school knowing they were related. A few loops saw Haru attempting to change her mind by small acts of kindness, or by demonstrating a better academic performance that might make her proud. These gestures seldom worked. If anything, she mocked him for trying too hard. After enough attempts, he grew weary of seeking her approval. Her contempt became just another part of the cycle he learned to endure. As the loops continued, he discovered subtle strategies for survival. For instance, there was a storeroom behind the gym that bullies liked to frequent after class. If Haru avoided that corridor, he could sometimes sidestep a beating. There were also certain teachers who, when approached politely at just the right time, would intervene in budding conflicts. By learning each teacher's quirks, Haru developed ways to exploit them, ensuring he faced fewer ambushes. Yet, no matter how deft he became at avoiding trouble, something inevitably sent his stress levels skyrocketing at some point in each loop. An elaborate prank by bullies, a verbal onslaught by Yumi, or a humiliating classroom moment orchestrated by Hana. Sometimes it was his sister's harsh dismissal at home, combined with parental indifference, that wore him down to the brink. When that frustration reached a breaking point, or when the physical harm was too great to bear, the loop reset again. Around the 300th or 400th loop, Haru began noticing that his mind was expanding in ways he had never anticipated. He was retaining mountains of knowledge from repeated academic lessons, random internet research, even conversations he overheard in the hallways. These pieces of information layered onto each other, giving him an almost encyclopedic memory. If he allowed himself to concentrate, he could recall entire volumes of data, chemical equations, historical facts, advanced mathematics, language grammar, literature analyses, and more. Yet his physical form had not caught up. Each loop pulled him back into the same overweight body that struggled to maintain stamina. He also experimented with pushing the loops further. Rather than resetting mid-semester, he tried to endure an entire school term without letting stress or injury break him. Sometimes he succeeded, and the loop only snapped back after a catastrophic event near the end, such as a violent confrontation with bullies. In other instances, he faced a meltdown earlier. The timeline was flexible so long as he managed his emotional threshold. The deeper he went into each loop, the more data he amassed. Eventually, he found himself around the 800th loop, having gathered so much knowledge that he could solve advanced physics problems as if they were basic arithmetic. Teachers were astounded in the loops where he demonstrated these abilities. Classmates suspected cheating or rumored that he was some kind of secret genius who had hidden his talents. In some loops, he tried forging alliances with other outcasts at school, but most of those outcasts were afraid of associating too openly with him, given his toxic reputation and the risk of drawing bullying onto themselves. The cycles of rejection battered his spirit, yet he felt unstoppable in one regard. Every humiliation, Every lonely hour of study and every confrontation with scorn made him more determined to utilize the time loop phenomenon. He refused to let the repeated cruelty break him permanently. By the time he neared the 1000th loop, Haru's mind had become an immense library of strategies, technical knowledge, and insights into his classmates' personalities. He knew exactly how to pass the bullies in the hallway without being noticed, how to sabotage the rumor mill by planting small seeds of confusion, and how to systematically ace any exam the teachers handed out. If he wanted, he could have walked into any class test or competition and emerged the top scorer. His biggest limitation remained his unchanging physique and the residual social stigma. Even the best strategic maneuvers could only do so much when a group of strong bullies decided to single him out, or when Yumi and Hana combined their influence to publicly shame him. He also discovered that the emotional toll of these repeated rejections could become too much, triggering an involuntary loop reset. Nevertheless, with each additional reset, his mastery over the environment grew. He sometimes mused over whether he could break free from the loops altogether if he ever attained genuine satisfaction, or if he discovered the trigger behind it all. Yet no matter how many times he died or was driven to meltdown, the cosmic mechanism of the loop remained as mysterious as ever. He only knew it was linked to extreme physical pain or emotional devastation, and that it always catapulted him back to that fateful Monday morning at the start of the same semester. Eventually, a life-changing opportunity appeared, though it was not apparent at first. The school scheduled a 2-month break at the end of the academic year, a break that, in previous loops, Haru had mostly wasted at home, languishing in self-pity. This time, on his 1000th loop, something in him snapped. He recognized that with his near-omniscient knowledge of academic subjects and social patterns, he could engineer the final weeks of that school term to avoid catastrophic resets. He could quietly survive until the break, then vanish for the entire 2 months to train his body far away from the scornful eyes of classmates. In prior loops, he had practiced working out or learning martial arts, but that training was limited by daily responsibilities and the relentless stress of the school environment. Now, bolstered by nearly 1,000 cycles worth of refined knowledge, countless tutorials, articles on fitness and nutrition, mental notes on how the body adapts to stress, he decided to isolate himself in a remote location for those 8 weeks. He meticulously planned every detail, from how to slip past his mother's and sister's notice to how to secure a cheap lodging in a remote mountainous region where no one would recognize him. He saved up money throughout the final stretch of the semester by leveraging small bits of knowledge, like timed part-time jobs or finding discount deals, ensuring he had enough to sustain himself for those weeks away. When the last day of school arrived before the break, he simply walked out of the gates without fanfare. He did not bother looking Yumi or Hana in the eye. His sister had no inkling of his plan, too busy with her own circle of friends. Most classmates believed he would just spend his vacation moping or glued to his computer. Little did they know that he had arranged transport that very evening to a secluded training camp in a rural area, one he had researched extensively across many loops. It was a modest place, not an official camp so much as a series of cabins and a small gym that travelers occasionally used. It lacked distractions and any hint of the social hierarchy that tormented him at school. Haru arrived there with a determined heart. Though his body reset each loop to the same overweight form, he also knew every intricacy of physical training from the cumulative knowledge in his mind. For the first time, he had uninterrupted weeks to apply that knowledge, free from the daily stress triggers that might cause him to reset prematurely. He began with a carefully designed regimen, basic cardio to build a foundation, coupled with controlled strength exercises that balanced intensity and recovery. He recalled countless articles on efficient protein intake, progressive overload, and how to maintain muscle gains. Every day, he rose with the sun and jogged through the rolling hills until his lungs burned. After breakfast, he headed to the small makeshift gym, utilizing weights and calisthenics that he had practiced in countless loops on a smaller scale. By afternoon, he studied advanced martial arts forms he had memorized from videos, practicing strikes, kicks, and defensive maneuvers in solitude. As the sun set, he spent hours reading through digital archives he had saved on his laptop, revisiting medical journals on exercise science, tips on posture correction, mental focus, and everything else that might optimize his results. The first week was excruciating. His overweight body screamed at him, punishing him with soreness in every muscle, and his joints ached under the sudden workload. Yet he pushed through, knowing exactly when to rest, when to stretch, and how to avoid injury. A massive advantage lay in his encyclopedic mind, the knowledge of exactly which exercises to do, and in what sequence, gleaned from 1,000 loops of trial, error, and reading. While others might have spent months just learning how to train properly, he launched straight into peak methods. By the second week, the initial aches began to subside, replaced by a growing sensation of strength and agility. He could run longer distances without gasping for air. His push-ups, once performed in shaky sets of 5 or 10, expanded to sets of 20, then 30, then more. He took progress photos each evening in the cabin's mirror, noticing subtle but steady changes in his physique. His chest felt firmer, his stomach marginally flatter, and his posture noticeably straighter. Most importantly, he sensed a new reservoir of determination in himself, a willpower forged by countless humiliations and the promise of rewriting his fate. Weeks turned into a month, and then that month slipped into the second month of the break. He streamlined his diet, investing in healthier foods rather than junk. The rural environment made it easier to avoid processed snacks that had once comforted him in moments of stress. Each day, he adhered to a balanced schedule of training, studying, and rest. He simulated fight scenarios in his head, drawing on the thousands of loops where bullies had confronted him. He practiced pivot steps, angle changes, and counters to common moves. On some days, he deliberately placed himself in physically taxing routines to shred stubborn fat and build lean muscle, ensuring that by the end of these 2 months, he would emerge in better shape than anyone at school would believe. He did not trigger the loop once throughout the entire vacation. No extreme injuries, no emotional breakdowns. Every single day, he carved progress into his muscles, his reflexes, and his stamina. By the time the 8th week arrived, the transformation was almost mythic. He had lost a significant amount of body fat, revealing a leaner, more defined physique. His shoulders had broadened, his face had slimmed down, and his eyes, once perpetually downcast, now shone with unwavering confidence. He realized upon looking in the mirror that he was not merely improved. He had become something closer to an ideal form, shaped by the accumulation of knowledge from 1,000 loops and disciplined application across these precious weeks. He felt stronger, faster, and more assured than at any point in any timeline. He also discovered that because he had carefully avoided any catastrophic resets during the break, he would maintain this new body when he returned to school. When the final day of vacation arrived, he packed up his things and caught a train back home, his heart thrumming with anticipation. He imagined the looks on people's faces, his mother, his sister, the girls at school, when they saw that Haru was no longer the overweight, broken-spirited boy they had mocked. He stepped off the train in the late afternoon, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, wearing fitted clothes that accentuated the lean physique beneath. Even the simple motion of walking felt more powerful. He found a taxi and made his way home. His mother greeted him with a distracted welcome, barely looking up from her tasks. Then she paused, did a double take, and stared at him as though trying to reconcile his face with the memory of her son. A stammer escaped her lips, and she asked how he had changed so much. He merely offered a non-committal response, saying he had spent the vacation at a training facility. She blinked several times but did not press further, perhaps too overwhelmed to react. His sister, however, delivered the stronger shock. She came home a few minutes later, saw him in the hallway, and froze with her mouth half open. She recognized the shape of his face, but could not believe that this toned, confident presence was her younger brother. She attempted to speak, muttering something about how she had heard rumors he left the city, but she was too stunned to formulate a coherent thought. Haru did not spare her much attention. He nodded curtly, took his duffel bag to his room and closed the door. He had no interest in indulging her curiosity or letting her off the hook for years of disdain. That night, he performed a final check in his mirror. He had changed his hairstyle slightly, recalling styles he had read about that complemented certain facial shapes. He decided to get contact lenses the next day, having memorized exactly what prescription he needed from various loops. He smoothed out his posture and found it almost unsettling to recognize the reflection. This was not the overweight, shy Haru. This was the manifestation of 1,000 loops of knowledge and 2 months of relentless execution. He knew the real test would be stepping back into school. Would his transformation hold up under the scrutiny of those who had once humiliated him? The next morning, he rose early and visited an optometrist to pick up contact lenses. Then he visited a hair salon he had identified through online reviews in some prior loop. There, he requested a style that highlighted his sharper features. The stylist marveled at how well-proportioned his face was once the extra weight had melted away and gave him a sleek, modern cut. Walking out of the salon, he felt a rush of confidence, though he steeled himself with the knowledge that this was merely the beginning. When he arrived on campus later that week, classes were just starting up for the new term. Crowds of students moved about, chatting about their summer experiences. Haru wove through them easily, his athletic build and poised stride drawing attention immediately. Whispers began among the clusters of students near the gate. Some wondered if he was a new transfer. Others speculated if he might be a substitute teacher because of his poise. He kept going, ignoring the stares. In the main hallway, he passed by a group of girls who stared openly, wondering who he was. Another crowd parted for him, uncertain of his identity. Moments later, in a bustling corridor near the lockers, he encountered a gaggle of girls from the class next door. One of them, a familiar face, though now wearing a bright expression, took a dramatic step backward, as though she had lost her balance. She flung out her arms and sank her weight toward him in a clear attempt to engineer a collision. Haru recognized in an instant that this was Yumi, the same girl who had once mocked him, but who clearly did not yet realize who he was. She had orchestrated this classic stunt. Instead of acting as a cushion, Haru stepped aside with a graceful pivot, letting her falter against the lockers. The impact was not severe, but enough to rattle her. She stood upright again, momentarily flustered, turning to look at him. An apology formed on her lips, or perhaps a flirtatious remark, but then she noticed something in the shape of his face. He met her gaze calmly, allowing a few seconds of silence to pass. Recognition flashed across her features. He saw shock, confusion, then unease as she realized she was staring at Haru, the boy she had repeatedly scorned and ridiculed. He offered a slight tilt of his head, acknowledging her, then continued walking without a word. Yumi's friends immediately surrounded her, asking if she was hurt, but she did not seem to hear them. Her wide-eyed stare followed Haru's retreating figure as she struggled to reconcile the overweight classmate she had mocked with the confident presence she had just encountered. In the hallway beyond, other students turned to watch him pass. Flickers of whispers ignited wherever he went, especially among girls who speculated whether he was a new transfer or some upperclassman they had never noticed. An undercurrent of mystery rippled through the corridors, fueled by his striking change in appearance. A few girls mustered the courage to approach him, one asking in a timid voice if he needed help finding a classroom, another inquiring if he was lost. Haru shook his head politely each time, making it clear he needed no guidance, but giving no other explanation. Some of them retreated, disappointed or intrigued. He located his homeroom, recalling the seat that he had occupied through so many loops. The tension in the air was palpable as he entered. Hana, who prided herself on social status, was at her desk with a group of admirers. She cast him a perfunctory glance, then did a double-take that nearly broke her usual composure. He took his seat, and no one quite knew how to react. The teacher arrived, paused with the attendance sheet, then blinked when Haru's name was called. He responded by raising his hand calmly, confirming to everyone present that he was indeed the boy they had once dismissed as worthless. Once the teacher began the usual first-day announcements, the students focused only half on her words. Their attention kept drifting to Haru, who wrote in his notebook with a detached precision, as though unaffected by the swirl of gossip around him. By the time the lunch period arrived, the entire class was abuzz with rumors. It did not take long for other students, even from different grades, to peek into the classroom's open doorway, trying to catch a glimpse of the astonishing transformation. Outside in the hall, Yumi lingered with two friends, debating whether she should approach him directly or pretend she had not recognized him. Eventually, she mustered enough nerve to step into the classroom. Haru noticed her presence but gave no reaction, continuing to eat the simple meal he had packed. She hovered uncertainly near his desk, hesitating between addressing him by name or feigning ignorance. Her friends watched the spectacle, anticipating some dramatic exchange. But Haru remained outwardly calm, finishing his lunch and placing the chopsticks neatly into their case. Unable to bear the silence, Yumi finally mumbled something about being glad to see him back. Haru acknowledged the comment with a single nod, then stood and walked out. Her friends murmured questions she could not answer. A ripple of unease crossed her features, recalling all the times she had ridiculed him, certain she held the power to hurt him without consequences. Now she sensed that power had shifted, and she was uncertain how to behave. Similar scenes occurred throughout the day. Girls from different clubs stopped Haru in the corridor, claiming to need help with boxes or props, or simply wanting to introduce themselves in a friendly way. Some offered to show him around or invited him to after-school gatherings. He recognized a spectrum of motives: curiosity, attraction to his new looks, or even strategic attempts to associate with someone rising in social visibility. He responded courteously, yet remained distant, leaving them puzzled. The day progressed with a series of minor upheavals. Hana found it impossible to ignore how Haru's transformation overshadowed her usual role as the center of attention. She attempted to engage him in conversation by asking pointed questions about his summer activities, hoping to seem welcoming. He offered brief, polite answers that revealed nothing of his rigorous training or the loops that had allowed him to develop such mastery. Hana sensed his aloofness, but could not decipher whether he was snubbing her intentionally or simply did not care. During an afternoon class, the teacher asked for volunteers to demonstrate a short presentation in front of everyone. In the past, Haru would have avoided the spotlight at all costs, but this time, he calmly accepted when the teacher called on him. He stepped to the front of the room and delivered concise, clear information on the assigned topic, never tripping over words. Classmates watched in near disbelief, some recalling how he used to stammer with nerves. The next morning, things escalated. More students flocked around him, openly or discreetly. Some asked about his skincare routine, others asked if he had grown taller, and a few boldly inquired if he was really the same person. He offered minimal responses, carefully deflecting personal questions. Yumi attempted a second approach by cornering him during a break, asking if they could talk privately, perhaps to clear the air of whatever had happened previously. He declined, walking away without stirring further conflict. Hana tried orchestrating a casual invite for group study, claiming it would be beneficial to combine their academic abilities. Haru politely said he had no interest. Each rejection left them more perplexed. In class, Haru continued to demonstrate a newfound competence. He aced quizzes with little visible effort, delivered succinct answers that impressed the teachers, and navigated practical group activities with a steady hand. No longer did he shuffle uncomfortably at the edges of class discussions. Instead, he contributed when necessary, then receded into silence, never seeking extra attention. His transformation in both academics and demeanor spread a sense of awe through the student body. Next day, Yumi lingered by the classroom door, determined to close the distance she had once widened through ridicule and scorn. The moment Haru stepped into the hallway, she mustered a bright smile, intending to convey warmth where there had once been only mockery. Yet, before she could speak, he fixed her with a glare so cold and unflinching it felt like a physical weight pressing her back. That silent stare, laden with a resolute contempt, struck deeper than any shouted insult. His eyes traced the memory of each jeer and every moment she had reveled in his shame, forming a shield of hardened bitterness that no casual friendliness could breach. The tension in the air made it clear there would be no cordial acceptance, no convenient forgetfulness to smooth over what she had done. His posture spoke of finality, daring her to keep pushing for forgiveness he would never offer. She hesitated, momentarily paralyzed by the realization that the boy she once dismissed had become someone capable of cutting her down with a single look. Then, with measured deliberation, Haru turned away, leaving her rooted to the spot. Speechless, exposed, and painfully aware that her renewed interest had been met with nothing but impenetrable disdain.